So here we have a 1971 Camaro dash cluster, and I'm just doing some troubleshooting on the fuel gauge to check functionality. So I've done some deciphering and I've done some diagrams to see what these plug sockets relate to and these connections, which relates to that plug socket there. So essentially we're going to run a power feed into the fuel gauge. This is the fuel gauge here, and then we're going to simulate running back to a sender and also earth. So the power actually comes in through this connector directly off this terminal down to here and across to this terminal here, and then through the circuit there actually feeds power in to that socket there, or that connector. This connector here feeds directly back to the sender unit. I've got a test sender unit on my desk, which then runs through this variable resistor, which normally lives in the tank, and then comes back out through the red, and then this red is essentially running back to earth at the moment right here. So currently switched off. What we're trying to simulate is feeding power into the instrument there, return through the sender, and then we've got an earth socket straight to earth as well. So I'll just flip this around. Hopefully these connectors stay on. So again, whoops, one's off. It's a 1971 Camaro, and it's troubleshooting the fuel sender, or fuel gauge rather, just to confirm that it's working. Let's see if I can flip that without losing the wire off the back of it. Let's have a look. Okay, so there's the instrument cluster. 71 Camaro. We're talking about this gauge here. So I'm now going to go back to the battery. I'm going to flick that on, and we're going to simulate fuel tank gauge movement. So let's see if we can wind that up. Yeah, there we go. So from one end to the other, telling me that the fuel gauge is working just fine. And then back down again, if you can just see my hand there on the sender unit. Pull that back down the other way, and that fuel gauge is working exactly how we want it, so no need to replace that one. There we have it. There's the full cluster. Can now turn that off. I'll flick that back over just to give you guys an idea of what the connectors are again. So power feeds straight in to this socket, tracks back over to power feed on this socket, then it runs through the gauge. We now have a connector here for the other side of the gauge, which goes into the fuel sender, out of the fuel sender, back to earth on this test battery, confirming that the power is actually coming across the circuit board and it is actually operating the fuel gauge.